Guys, I'm not sure if you noticed, but ESPN came out with their top 25 players in the 21st century. The criteria is a little bit muddy, but I think it looks at their entire basketball resume, including accomplishments and statistics accumulated before the year 2000. So you're including Kobe's 90s years, Garnett's 90s years, Dirk Nowitzki's 90 years, and things like that from the 1990s. But we're looking at the top 25 players from the 21st century. Today's video is about 3 glaring, indefensible errors that were made by these voters when they put this list together. Hopefully you guys enjoy the video. I want to know what your perception is of this top 25 players of the 21st century list. Enjoy the video. Are you tired of selling your cards on eBay, creating the listing, taking the pictures, front, back, shipping, non-paying bidders? Let the pros at Fanatics Marketplace do all of the work for you. I do. That's why I use Fanatics for my vaulting and for my selling. If you've got a bunch of unwanted inventory that you've been sitting on for days, weeks, months, years, ship it to Fanatics Marketplace and let them do all the work. Just make sure when you ship it, you use the promotional code Cajun, all capital letters, C-A-J-U-N, and tell them that Cajun Cardboard sent you, and let the pros do the rest at Fanatics Marketplace. All right, guys, let's not waste any more time. We're talking about basketball today. Nothing about basketball cards, just the top 25 of the 21st century as produced by ESPN from a panel of experts. Okay, so let's go. I'm going to get screen share going here. Real simple. Nobody's going to argue with LeBron and Kobe and Steph Curry and Tim Duncan and Shaq. Those 5 are going to be top 5 in some order. I would probably be okay. I do think it requires a little bit closer examination with the Tim Duncan, Steph Curry, and Kobe Bryant. A lot of people take for granted and assume that Kobe is just necessarily ahead of Tim Duncan, and then they've got Curry ahead of Tim Duncan, which is interesting as well. I think that merits a little bit closer attention. I might talk about those 3 players in particular in a future video, but we're just talking about 3 errors a little bit further down the list, right? So I want to start with the first one. If you kind of scroll down the list here, you'll see Tony Parker is at number 21. That seems reasonable. Dude was a pretty good point guard for probably probably the second best dynasty of the 2000s behind the Golden State Warriors. Some people might even say the best dynasty of the 2000s. Tony Parker was the engine. Tony Parker came over from France, I think, as a 19-year-old. Couldn't shoot the ball from the perimeter, but he was crafty as hell. He was one of the best floater games in the history of the NBA. Finished really well around the rim for a little dude. Never seemed to get his shot blocked. I think before Kyrie Irving showed up in the NBA, we probably would have said that Tony Parker is the greatest finishing little dude under the rim in the history of basketball. He's ranked number 21. I don't have a problem with him being ranked 21. The thing I have a problem with is that Manu Ginobili is ranked 4 spots ahead of him. Manu Ginobili was a 6-man player that came off the bench and was recently inducted in the Hall of Fame as well. Again, no slight to Manu Ginobili, but this is just me and my observation and my perception, and I've got the stats to back it up and my personal opinion showing there's no way Manu Ginobili is 4 spots better than Tony Parker. Number one, the starting point guard for an NBA dynasty has significantly more responsibility than a dude coming off the bench and winning 6th man of the year over and over, okay? When your job is to come off the bench and get buckets and lead second units against inferior players, right? That's one thing you got to remember. Every time this 6th man of the year award is given out and people are like, he should be starting, remember, these guys do their damage, not always, but predominantly against second units. And that was the case for Manu Ginobili. Of course, Tony Parker as a starter forever, right, for 20 plus years or whatever, his job was always to defend and play against the other team's starting point guard. Manu Ginobili was a bucket getter coming off the bench, and he was very, very good, but he's a career 13-3-3. Like, that doesn't just scream Hall of Fame to me, right? It's just like Draymond Green, and we'll get to him in just a second. 13-3-3 does not scream Hall of Famer to me. So if we kind of just look at this comparison on screen share, Tony Parker played about 200 more games. That matters. That's about 3.5 seasons, about two and a half seasons more games than Manu Ginobili. Averaged more points, but not just an overwhelming quantity more points. Ginobili and Parker, neither one of them rebounded very well. Parker wasn't really a high assist guy. You would think he would be a high assist guy, but he was more of the floor general type. He didn't put up the gaudy assist numbers of a Chris Paul or a Nash or a Stockton or a point guard like that. So he scored it a little bit, he assisted a little bit, but he was really brilliant at running a team and understanding, hey, I've got the greatest power forward that ever lived on my team, and obviously a guy that's in the top 4 or 5 of the top 25 players of the 21st century. Maybe I'll get him the ball, right? And so much better field goal percentage from Tony Parker because, again, he didn't take very many threes. Ginobili took a few. And Ginobili shot a pretty good percentage from three. Parker, not so much. Never did become a prolific three-point shooter. But it looks like three percentage, free throw percentage, effective field goal percentage, box score plus minus, value over replacement. But when we get down here to awards and honors, and these are usually voted on by your peers and the writers at the time. I'm not sure who the voters were on this top 25 list. You look at championships, obviously it's the same. You look at Hall of Fame, they're both in the Hall of Fame. Whether you believe they should both be in the Hall of Fame or not is a totally separate deal. But usually the second and or third best player on one of the best dynasties over a 20-year period, those guys are probably going to get in the Hall of Fame at some point. But look at the all NBAs, and this is what I really kind of hyper focus on. All NBAs and where you finish sort of in MVP voting and things like that really, really matter because it kind of takes into account how you rank against your peers at your position during that era. So both of these guys would have been backcourt options for all NBA teams. Tony Parker has twice as many, 4-2. And again, remember, playing against starters and playing against bench units is totally separate. The Finals MVP that Tony Parker has, that matters. And again, I'm a guy who kind of, obviously I'm always going to prioritize regular season MVP over Finals MVP. Finals MVP is just indicative of a player who steps up and busts ass during a 7-game series, right? So it's a small sample size. Anything could happen. Ginobili could have gotten hot and gotten a Finals MVP as well, but Tony Parker actually did it and got it. And then you look at All-Star teams. Tony Parker made 3 times as many All-Star teams, so that tells you sort of something about what voters at the time during those seasons felt about Parker as compared to Ginobili. I just think Tony Parker, just using the eye test, we've got to throw out a lot of the statistical stuff because neither one of them were statistical juggernauts. I just think Tony Parker certainly should be ranked even with or better than Manu Ginobili. Again, I don't necessarily have a problem with both of them being somewhere in the 20s, but like Ginobili at 17 and Tony Parker 4 slots behind just doesn't make a lot of sense because none of the people that were voting on All-NBA or All-Stars at the time thought that Ginobili was better than Parker overall, top to bottom. So I just thought that was interesting. So that's error number 1. Error number 2, we're going to talk about 2 a little bit more relevant players. These are all-time greats. These are probably both, for sure, Dirk Nowitzki is a top 25 player of all time, and I think a lot of people would put Dwayne Wade maybe, if not in the top 25, probably in the top 35. And again, you got to remember, a lot of guys are coming along right now that are squeezing these guys out of these spots. Maybe not Nowitzki, but Dwayne Wade, right? There's guys that are squeezing them out of these spots. Dwayne Wade only has 1 ring as an alpha, okay? And Shaq was on his team, and Shaq was no slouch the year Dwayne Wade won that ring. Dirk Nowitzki has, I think, I don't want to say the most important championship ring of all time, but the most unlikely and the most heavily weighted ring of all time because he won an NBA title with no All-Stars on his roster and did it as a one-man gang. And if you want to go back and see Murderer's Row, go look at the teams that that Dirk Nowitzki beat the season that he won the NBA title. If you look at the teams he beat in 1, 2, 3, 4 rounds, it is astonishing, including the Heatles, right? With Dwayne Wade and Bosh and LeBron James. That was Dirk Nowitzki with an aging Jason Kidd and I believe Jason Terry and a bunch of other dudes like J.J. Barea. And Dirk Nowitzki just went absolutely donkey nuts in that series and put them on their ass and shut their mouth. Let's just put it that way. So let's look at these players compared to each other. Total games. Dirk has played 500 almost more games. I'm sorry, but that matters. It just does. And I know longevity, you want to know what players were like at their peak. Well, Dirk Nowitzki didn't just have the peak, he also had the longevity, and Wade had a pretty good career. Playing 1,000 games in the NBA is no joke, but Dirk played 1,522. That's a lot more games and a lot more time to accumulate a lot more stats. Dirk Nowitzki's going to be a lot higher on the all-time list, specifically on the all-time scoring list, despite averaging a little bit less than Wade. He averaged about 1.3 less than Wade, but he did it, 470 more games. So he's going to be a little bit higher on that all-time scoring list, which I think matters. Obviously, a better rebounder than Wade. Wade more assists, steals, blocks, no question about that. Dirk's job was not to dime people up. He received the ball at the elbow, put his knee in your teeth, and then just drop buckets on you over and over and over and over like a 7'2" Larry Bird from Würzburg, Germany. If you look at their field goal percentage, pretty similar. Obviously, Dirk could shoot the three. Wade had no chance and no prayer to do that and didn't really take very many. Late in his career, he tried to force that issue just because the game was changing and he couldn't do it. 88% free throw shooter. Dirk was nuts, lights out in one games with his ability to shoot free throws as well. Box plus minus pretty close, but value over replacement heavily in favor of Dirk Nowitzki. But here's where I think there's the biggest disparity. We're talking about first team All-NBAs, 2 times as many for Dirk. Now, part of that could be premised on the fact that Dwayne Wade was a guard and Dirk Nowitzki was a forward, and so you're getting votes from different, you're going versus different people, right? But yet Dirk's trying to get these first team All-NBAs versus Kevin Garnett and LeBron James and other dudes in the Tim Duncan, other dudes in the front court. Pretty damn good basketball players, so it might have been more difficult to get these All-NBA teams versus the front court than it was the back court, to be quite honest with you. All-NBAs, 12 for Dirk, 8 for Dwayne Wade. That's a big disparity right there, man. That is a huge disparity. Of course, Dwayne Wade made 3 all-defensive teams. He was a tremendous off-the-ball defender. A very good on-the-ball defender, too, but tremendous at jumping passing lanes and getting in the break and, highlight reel dunks when he got steals. MVPs, Dirk's got 1. They each have 1 finals MVP, 14 to 13 All-Stars. I just think Dirk Nowitzki, if you ask anybody walking on the street, who gets more fanfare, who played a more exciting brand of basketball, I think Dwayne Wade did. Who put up a better statistical resume historically? I just don't think there's an argument between Dwayne Wade and Dirk Nowitzki. I would love to spend more time and go into more detail on the aggregates and what they actually totaled in their categories and their respective stat accumulation over their, the big disparity is just the games, man. So I just think Dirk belongs ahead of Dwayne Wade. And again, they're not that far behind. Wade's 8. Durant's 9, Nowitzki's 10. I just think Dwayne Wade was in the right place at the right time. He was a clear beta for both of the Heat championships. He was, the co-alpha with Shaq and probably the alpha with that early title he won before LeBron James and Chris Bosh came to town. But Dirk Nowitzki's 1 ring, that 1 ring, honest to God, it should be worth 2, to be quite honest with you. That's how unlikely and how incredible it was what he did in that season. So, again, an argument could even be made that Kevin Durant belongs ahead of Dwayne Wade as well. I think if you ask most people, they would have Kevin Durant in the top 15 all time, and they would have Dirk Nowitzki somewhere in the top 20 of all time. But I don't think anybody would have Dwayne Wade in the top 20 of all time. Anybody who's been around long enough, us old heads who've watched enough basketball and were actually alive when these guys were rookies, right? Nowitzki, a rookie back in '98, Dwayne Wade, a rookie, and of course in 2003, one of the best rookie classes of all time. So that's glaring error number 2. Glaring error number 3 is just going to be Russell Westbrook being 23rd. I'm just not okay with that. You may not like Russell Westbrook. You may not think Russell Westbrook's an efficient basketball player. You may think he's a weirdo. You may think he's rude. You may think he's abrasive. You may think he's not a great teammate. You could think all of these things, everything I just said. You could, of course, refer to Draymond Green as well. But Russell Westbrook does not deserve to be 23rd, and he definitely does not deserve to be behind Draymond Green. So let me just kind of show you real quick Russell Westbrook's resume in case you may have forgotten, because what we do in the, as observers of the NBA and as fans and even as people who take a really close look at the NBA like I do and like some of you guys watching do, if you're still watching this video to this point, you really care about the NBA. If you care about this list and you're still listening to this dumbass from Louisiana screaming at the screen, 9 times All-Star, 2 times scoring champ, leading the NBA in scoring more than once. There's not a long list of dudes who've done that. I don't know if you realize that. That list is pretty freaking elite. It's mostly guys who are in the top 20 all time on the all-time historical rankings for most people. 3-time assist champ. So now you're talking about multiple times leading the NBA in scoring and multiple times leading the NBA in assists. It's a very rare combination. Magic led the league in assists often. Stockton led the league in assists often. But neither one of them ever sniffed a scoring title. And now you're talking about the guy with the most career triple-doubles, and it ain't close. And he didn't get the benefit of this era. Because remember, Russell Westbrook's well past his prime. If Russell Westbrook was playing today, right now, like if he started his career in like 2019 or something like that, he would obliterate the all-time triple-doubles lead, because now triple doubles are flowing like water, right? Because, and again, people are always wondering, oh, these guys are that much better. And I'm like, no, the floor is space. It's a pace and space era. There's more 3-pointers being taken, so you have more point guards getting long rebounds, right? And that leads to runouts, which leads to more assists. So assists come easier. Points come easier, right, because the way the games are officiated. But rebounds is really what's led to the proliferation of triple-doubles, because you got little guys, and I say little. Russell Westbrook's like 6'4", 220, right? 6'4", 200. Okay, he doesn't weigh 200. He's bigger than that. But let's say he's 6'4", 215. That's a lot of rebounds for little guys, because people are taking shots from further away from the goal, and therefore the rebounds are going to be further away from the goal, which, they escape the big men, and the little guys pick it up. So that's why triple-doubles are up. But nevertheless, he is the all-time triple-double leader. He's on the NBA 75th anniversary all-time team. He was 2-time All-Star MVP, which I don't give a damn about, and neither should you, because it's just one random occurrence in one game where some guys every once in a while decide they want to win MVP. It's dumb. But he was the MVP of the league. And guess who wasn't? Draymond Green. So let's compare Russell Westbrook and Draymond Green and just see how silly this is. He averaged almost 2.5 times as many points as Draymond Green. And we know that's not Draymond Green's job. His job is not to score. And thank God, because he can't at all. He can't shoot. He can't dribble. He can't do anything except pass the ball as a fulcrum on the floor. 7.1 rebounds per game. He out-rebounded a power forward. Let's put it that way. He out-rebounded a power forward on a team that traditionally doesn't have a great rebounding big man. In fact, Golden State's never had a dominant big man. I'm thinking of Andrew Bogut. I'm thinking of Kevon Looney. I'm thinking of JaVale McGee. Who else am I forgetting from those dynasty teams? And so there would be more rebounds available for Draymond Green, because he plays buttloads of minutes and he doesn't have a gigantic 7'2" guy stealing rebounds from him, because none of those guys that I just named were, off the charts rebounders. So you would think ample opportunity for Draymond Green to rebound the ball. This just comes down to want. And Russell Westbrook wanted triple doubles, and he chased triple doubles, and you can call him a stat chaser, and he was. But guess what? If you're getting the stats, and by the way, rebounding is not a selfish stat. Assist is not a selfish stat. How about this? Averaging more steals than this superstar defensive player of the year, Draymond Green, is not a selfish stat. And so, you're talking about a statistical landslide in favor of Russell Westbrook, which we expected, right? So field goal percentage, Draymond Green's a little better because all they can do is shoot layups. Can't shoot at all. 3-point percentage, they both suck. They can't shoot threes at all. They both still think they can, and they think they should, and so they keep doing it, but they can't shoot to save their lives. Free throw percentage, neither one of them's real great. Westbrook's actually okay, although he's gotten worse, it seems like, late in his career. Effective field goal percentage, Draymond only shoots layups, so they both shoot terrible three-pointers, but Russ took way more in his career, so that's why the effective field goal percentage is shaded in favor of Draymond. But here's where it gets crazy. Look at the value over replacement player, more than double in favor of Westbrook. Look at the box score plus minus, significantly in Russell Westbrook's favor. And then when we get down here, you're talking about 9 All-NBA teams. This is super, super important to me. Like, I heavily weight these All-NBA teams because not a ton of that is, do they take team success into account? Yes. But whose teams have been more successful than Draymond Green's, and yet he's only got 2 All-NBA teams? And again, all of the responsibility fell on Westbrook. He was the alpha for a lot of those Oklahoma City teams. So, after Durant, he was the alpha on some of the teams after that. And I know he's played on a zillion teams, and I know he's bounced around the league, and I know he looks like a decrepit old man right now, still trying to relive his youth, and he can't do it. But you got to throw recency bias out the window. We could say the same things about Draymond Green. He ain't the same player he used to be either. So let's throw that out the window. Let's just take a macro perspective of their career and their accomplishments. 9 All-NBA versus 2 is, pretty ridiculous. Again, 8 all-defensive teams. When that's your primary purpose on the court, it's going to be easier to get defensive teams, right? If Russell Westbrook wanted to make an all-defensive team, he probably could have, but offensive stats would have sacrificed. So we're not going to just kind of glaze over this. Draymond Green is a great team defender. And again, I think he gets a little too much credit at this stage of his career about being an elite defender. I do not think he is an elite defender right now. I do think he is a defensive floor general and a very, very good team defender. There's no question about that. He's also a very good passer. I think a lot of his as assists are catching a ball, letting two of the greatest shooters that ever lived run off of dribble handoffs, and he just turns his ass and blocks people out while these guys shoot threes with little or no spacing, but they're such good shooters that the ball goes in. Those are assists in favor of Draymond. Most of the assists from Russell Westbrook are actual assists. A lot of Draymond's are just dribble handoff assists, what we called circle dribble back in the AAU days, where you would dribble it, hand it off to a player, and then you'd circle him and he'd pitch it to you, and of course the defender rubs off on the guy that set the screen and pitched the ball back to him. I see a lot of that crap from Draymond Green. And then 9 All-Stars to 4. I mean, it's more than double All-Stars. It's 9 to 2 All-NBAs. I just think, if you ask anybody in the NBA who's a better player, throw out the titles, right? The titles, I guess they matter. I'm not going to weight them the same as all NBA teams and All-Star teams, because that's really how you're measured against your peers. What do these voters, coaches, players, writers, and all that? And I know that who votes on it and how it's weighted changes from year to year, and especially it did during these guys' long, illustrious careers. But I just don't see how anybody could consider Draymond Green even remotely in the same conversation as one of the greatest statistical players of all time in Russell Westbrook. That's just my personal opinion. And again, I'm not just this big Russell Westbrook fan or this homer. I think he's a stat chaser. I think he's, had ample opportunities to win titles and failed to do so. But I also think on the flip side, Draymond Green was placed in the most fertile possible situation of any basketball player given his skill set in the history of the world. No player, maybe Bill Russell, has ever been dropped into a situation to better mask their inadequacies and amplify their positives than Draymond Green when he was drafted and placed in the middle of this dynasty, at the outset of this dynasty, with two of the greatest shooters of all time around him. And oh, by the way, Kevin Durant's a pretty freaking good shooter as well. So again, I've always said it. If you just kind of erased Draymond Green from the history of the Warriors and you replaced him with Kelly Olynyk, I truly believe the numbers would be very, very similar, and Kelly Olynyk would have 4 titles. Again, Kelly Olynyk would not have any all-defensive teams, so I'm not going to take that away from Draymond Green, but I just don't put Draymond Green in the same category as Russell Westbrook. So those are my 3 observations. Let me know what you guys think on the ESPN 25 list. We could go do this. We could do 10 hours of this, guys, and I could talk all day long, but those are the 3 that kind of jumped out to me at first. It just didn't seem right. Manu Ginobili, 4 spots ahead of Parker. Seems weird. Dwayne Wade ahead of Dirk Nowitzki. I don't think anybody really would think that if they look at the statistics closer. And then Draymond Green being on the list, to me, is ridiculous. That's just me, and I think that's just people looking at all defensive teams and championships, because nothing else about Draymond Green is impressive. Like, nothing. So to tell me he's in the best 25 players in the last 24 years, to me, is absolutely preposterous. I guess we could go through the list. I mean, there's players that are not on this list that I could think about. I don't even see Vince Carter on the list, to be quite honest with you. So anybody out there who thinks that, Draymond Green is a better basketball player than Vince Carter, is Vince Carter not on this list? Well, that's glaring error number 4, in my personal opinion. Let me know what you guys think. Check out the list. I've got it on there. I've got it on screen share. I'll cut and paste it into the YouTube description. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Keep collecting, stay positive in the hobby, and peace.